you believe what has just happened here? There is absolute uproar here. Illich, unbelievable.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of Ariel and the Bad Guy right here on ESPN Plus. I'm Ariel, and that's the bad guy, Chael P. Chael, you're looking svelte lately. Have you been working out? I feel like something's happening.
Well, thank you very much. You know, I have to tell you, I always get a kick out of when you say, right here, puts me in a good spirit.
I appreciate it. That's my little homage to the great Mick Foley. Cheap Pup, right here, the platform we built. Here we go, round one.
Round one. Earlier this week, Conor McGregor announced his retirement from MMA via Twitter. Now the second time he's hung up the gloves on social media. Ariel, do you believe Conor is actually retired?
Okay, Chael, there's obviously a lot to discuss here, and at the very top, I want to say that we are aware of the report that came out on Tuesday afternoon via the New York Times, which stated that Conor McGregor was arrested in mid-January. He was brought in for questioning after a woman in Ireland accused him of sexual assault. Now, he has not been charged with anything, and that investigation is ongoing. And so because it is still a developing situation, I want to put that situation off to the side for a quick second and talk about the news that happened late Monday. That was Conor McGregor retired. Again, he did it back in 2016 and he did it late Monday. This time, the circumstance is much different. This time, from what I'm hearing, he's at odds with the UFC. You'll recall back in 2016, Chael, he got the fight that he wanted. He got the Nate Diaz rematch. He got the terms that he wanted. He was going to fight Nate Diaz at UFC 200. The reason why he retired back then was because he didn't want to go to the pre-fight press conference in Las Vegas because a friend of his had just fought another individual on a local show in Ireland, and that individual ended up dying as a result of some of the injuries sustained in the fight, and Conor didn't feel comfortable going a couple of days later to Las Vegas to promote a fight. This time around, it's about a piece of the pie. It's about the new pay-per-view structure. It's about respect. It's about not getting the Nate Diaz fight. He is frustrated, and I think he finally broke and said, you know what? I don't need this. My whiskey business is doing well. I have other ventures that are doing well. I have sponsors. I don't need to play this game with you guys because in the world of boxing, you don't tell Floyd Mayweather when he's going to fight, who he's going to fight, what date he's going to fight, what venue. Floyd decides that, and I have earned that right. I have earned that kind of respect, and I need to start calling the shots around here. So to answer the question, I think eventually he will fight again. I think he wants to fight again, but I just think he's very frustrated right now.
And Ariel, I will see your timeline, but let me raise you one piece because I think it's really relevant here. When Conor first retired, and it was closer to like that 2014 range, he threw out the term, I'm retired. Dana White had to go into action real fast. I remember he went on the set of UFC Tonight to say, hey, these are just words. He is not meaning that he's retired, nothing to see here. But the relevance and the importance that Dana did this, he went on to explain to the audience was, we are now partners with an organization called USADA. If you retire, you're removed from the pool. To re-enter the pool means you must unretire, but you must now sit out. I believe it was 2 months. It could possibly be 3. It's very similar, by example, for our audience, what Brock Lesnar just went through to try to get his fight with Daniel Cormier. Now, Brock's rules were slightly different because he was a past offender, but to bring up the point that this does have ramifications. So for anybody that thinks he's just looking for a cheap headline, yeah, I see that a little bit. And no, I don't buy at all that we won't see Conor again. However, it is not as simple as a cheap ploy for one day of attention. There are ramifications should he come back, and that specifically is the USADA pool. This is very real, at least for the short term.
Yeah, and so a couple of things there. First of all, I've been told that he has not formally told USADA that he wants to be out of the pool. So that is obviously a story worth following. I've also been told that the reason why he retired or announced his retirement late Monday has nothing to do with the New York Times story that came out later Tuesday afternoon. And I also think it's interesting to note to compare Dana's stance a few years ago when he initially retired in 2016 and Dana's stance this time around, because this time around you may have noticed that Dana was saying, oh, he should retire. He's got a whiskey business that's doing great. He's killing it. I wish him the best. I totally get it. That's Dana telling the world that I'm the alpha male here, that you're not bigger than the UFC. Remember they wanted to put him in the co-main event, Chael? That's what this is all about. Initially, they wanted to put him in the co-main event against Donald Cerrone. Then they ended up getting past that point and moved him up to the main event. And now he wants to fight Nate Diaz, but they don't want to give him Nate Diaz. And he's frustrated about this, and he's also frustrated about the fact that Nate Diaz did an entire, press tour on Monday saying that he wanted to fight Khabib and not him. This is the fight to make. Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor 3, and he's going out and saying, I want this fight, and Nate is going out and saying, I don't want this fight, so it just muddies the waters. But I think the fact that Dana came out and said, yeah, all the best to you. Notice he's not doing that with Daniel Cormier. He's not saying all the best to you, he's saying, I want you to stay. But with Conor, because they're at odds, he's saying all the best to you because they can't seem to see eye to eye right now.
Ariel, if the point you're trying to make, and the way I'm interpreting it, is that Conor is now head-to-head with a master negotiator, yes, I will fully concede to that. But I do think there's one more interesting piece to this timeline. I think you have to back up to Jimmy Fallon's couch. Don't forget, that taping, that was recorded only hours before the allegation, as you talked about for the assault, in conjunction with the retirement. They just don't go hand in hand. Conor was on a media tour of some sort. Conor said, and I quote, "Take a look at me, I'm in shape, I see the hand, what do you got?"
It was taped a week ago. It aired a couple hours before, but it was actually taped a week ago. Finish your point. It was taped a week ago, so that changes your point, right? I would imagine.
Well, I don't know that it does significantly. You are right that I thought that the taping and the airing were hand in hand. However, even if you want to separate it by a week, it did appear that Conor was ready. I trusted him at his words. He told Jimmy Fallon, take a look at me. I'm in shape. I'm looking for a fight. Well, I did take a look at him. He was in shape. I believe he was looking for a fight. What changed? It's very hard for me to believe, one, that the retirement is totally sincere, and two, that they aren't somehow related.
Okay, round two. Here we come.
Last year, I got offered 2 fights by the UFC. I don't like to half-ass things, be 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
The California Kid,
I'm going to get my body back into a weapon and look for an opportunity to possibly step in. The most logical fight that makes sense and makes promotion is Uriah Faber versus TJ Dillashaw.
Round 2, Monday on Ariel Helwani's MMA show, we found out UFC Hall of Famer Uriah Faber looks to be on the comeback trail and is hunting former teammate TJ Dillashaw. Ariel, are you in or out on California Kid versus Dillashaw?
Oh man, I am in on Uriah Faber returning. I'm in on this fight, TJ Dillashaw versus Uriah Faber. First of all, Chael, I had no idea until Monday that Faber's turning 40 this year. So first of all, it's kind of funny that he's still the California Kid, but he looks like he's 28. Like, I will never be in the kind of shape that he's in at 40 or almost 40. It's amazing to me that he looks the way he did like 10 years ago. Second of all, he just became a dad, and that seems to have motivated him and rejuvenated him, and he seems to be in great spirits and great shape. And he is grappling against Nicky Ryan. And in case you don't know, I know you know who Nicky Ryan is, Chael. He is a teenage phenom in the BJJ world, and they're going to have a grappling match in Polaris in May. And it almost feels like that is sort of the appetizer to his comeback. He is still in the USADA pool. It's amazing. He hasn't fought in 2 years, and he's still getting drug tested. So I love the idea of him coming back and challenging TJ Dillashaw, who just failed this drug test. We still don't know why he failed or for what substance he failed. But here's the thing with Uriah Faber. He has always been that clean guy. He has always been the guy who has been against PEDs. He's always been against cheating, shortcuts, things of that nature. So he comes back and says, all right, when Dillashaw is going to come back in January, I want to be the first guy to challenge him, and I want to put this feud to rest once and for all. The student versus the teacher, the mentor versus the student. I love this storyline, everything about it. He's taking his time, he's not rushing into it. Brilliant. I love it. Welcome back, Uriah Faber. I can't wait for this fight if they make it happen.
Ariel, what is it, my birthday around here? I can't believe that we might actually get this match. This is the fight that there should have been, right? And I understand where Cody was able to step in front of it. But remember all the hype and anticipation we have just as Cody, the student, stepping in for the master Uriah to go deal with this TJ thing. I mean, look, that was a great storyline. We were able to get it a couple of times over the course of a year, and the Ultimate Fighter and the build-up. But yes, of course, the most sense has always meant Uriah Faber versus TJ Dillashaw. If there's now a way to do it, and there wasn't for a little bit because of Uriah's retirement, and it's very fair that you brought up the point that he stayed in the USADA pool. That actually ties in with round one where I was bringing that up with Conor McGregor. But this is a relevant thing because what it means is Uriah Faber could step in at any point. And Ariel, if there's anything that you and I know, even when a guy comes back and even has a specific opponent in mind, as long as he says, I want to come back, as long as you have those fruits and those pieces, the promotion then is pretty good at going, okay, I can meet you halfway. I won't necessarily get you TJ next, but I am planning to come to Sacramento in a few weeks, by example. And all of a sudden, I do think you have a resurgence of Uriah. Wherever the timeline matches up with TJ Dillashaw, my goodness, yes, I'm a buyer. Let's do this fight.
Oh, man, there's like years of storylines, of footage, of back and forth, of interviews, all that stuff that you can put into the promotion of this fight. And you mentioned Sacramento. You took the word right out of my mouth. They got to do this fight in Sacramento. They have a brand spanking new arena there where the Sacramento Kings play. That was actually where Uriah had his retirement fight. You remember back in the day, Chael, the WEC days when Uriah was headlining those Sacramento cards? I mean, those cards, the atmosphere, the crowds, the buzz in the city rivaled any big UFC card. He was the face of Northern California MMA for a very long time. So to have him come back, he's still obviously in a lot of shape. There's the storyline there of Dillashaw leaving the team and Dwayne Ludwig being involved in all of this. I mean, there's so much there, Chael. My one concern, and I wonder if you share the same concern, is that January is still a pretty far time away, right? I mean, what is it, March, mid-March here? So we still have to wait another 9-10 months for this fight to be a reality. That means he's going to be closer to 41 by the time it could actually happen. Does that seem like it's too far away? Like, I want to see this fight tomorrow, not in 10 months.
Yeah, and we kind of just got bit by this bug already, didn't we, with Brock Lesnar versus Daniel Cormier, which was announced, right, by the way, in March of last year. So I do think that there's a real relevance to that, but I think that might tie into what I was alluding to a moment ago. As soon as Uriah Faber discloses, I'm in the pool, I'm ready to come back, I'm on weight, all of a sudden, maybe he doesn't get the perfect opponent, and I think he has laid out the perfect opponent. I think TJ Dillashaw makes the most sense, but maybe they ease him back with somebody else, and all of a sudden, those 9 months help fans like you and I to pass a little bit quicker. Look, just the notion that he's coming back. I love that you mentioned he's grappling with Nicky Ryan, and many people aren't going to know that name. That is an incredible match because it's incredible risky. Nicky Ryan, I believe, unless he's had a birthday, is 19 years old. Even without the help of a calendar, I know he's still a teenager. Point being, Uriah, the competitor, he's putting a lot on the line there, Ariel, putting a lot on the line by giving a young phenom an opportunity at a Hall of Famer.
Okay, let me ask you. Let me put you on the spot. If they do fight, Faber, Dillashaw,
okay,
who wins?
I will share this with you, putting myself in those shoes. The guys that I looked up to and the guys that mentored me, there was never a time I was able to flip that respect and get the jump on them. That's something that TJ Dillashaw is going to have to deal with. It's very real. It's not necessarily about who's better. It's about who can go out and perform on that night, and I think a lot of things would favor Uriah Faber.
Wow, how about that? Very interesting. Round 3, here we come.
Well, Marlon Moraes, I got a message for you. If you think you're going to be the second hard at break this year, man, I hope you're ready, bro. I'm not afraid of you. I'm an Olympic champ. I defeated Demetrius Johnson. I defeated TJ Dillashaw. You think a World Series of Fighting former champ is going to scare me? I'm going to shut your lights out. And I'm going to tell you something else. I already have my next opponent in line. Your boy, your coach, Frankie Edgar, I know he's going to be there. He can get Thomas Cejudo too, because I will shut his lights out too.
Round 3, Henry Cejudo will take on Marlon Moraes for the bantamweight title next, but he's calling out fighters left and right. Chael, do you like the new brash, trash-talking approach from the flyweight champ?
Are you kidding me? You know I like this. Listen, Ariel, one thing that people are always going to do to Henry, at least in this phase of his career, is break down Henry, the performer, the entertainer. Cringe-worthy moments. He jumped the shark. He went too far. Look, I get it, and that's fair, and that's something that I think that he's growing as, and I think it's something he's doing better as. I want to look at it from a different perspective, which would tie in with Conor McGregor in round 1. Okay, Conor's out. Conor's retired. Why? Your hypothesis, because he's not getting to call the shots. because he's not like Floyd Mayweather saying who, what, when, and where, and he doesn't like that. I think you're onto something there, but isn't this a refreshing side? You've got a champion in Henry Cejudo who's calling everybody out. It's a bit of what Ben Askren's doing. Anybody, anytime. I'm ready for the contract. He calls a guy out and then says, oh, and by the way, you train with Frankie Edgar? I'll fight Frankie Edgar too. Ariel, as a fan, and I am a fan first, there's something that I love about that. I don't want guys getting hardware, getting opportunities, and all of a sudden turning the gun back on the business and saying now business, industry, ESPN, UFC, you owe me. No, I don't like that, Ariel. Look, this is a volunteer army. You either want to compete or you don't. Henry Cejudo has convinced me that he wants to compete, and I love it.
Wow, so I'm happy to hear you say that, Chubb, because I think in the past you've been critical of his style, of his trash talk. So he's won you over. Is that accurate?
He's won me over. As a matter of fact, if I could cut you off, all the reasons I used to hate him for are now the reasons I love him for. I don't think he's changed. He's just won me over.
And how did he do that? Please explain.
Because he stayed after it and he made me believe it. He made me buy into it. It wasn't quips anymore. It wasn't a guy looking for attention and headlines. It was a guy that when those opportunities came, he put the mouthpiece in and he went out there and he did the heavy lifting. And now he wants to fight 2 and 3 guys all at once. He's calling out. Great. The more the better. Let's sign it up. It happens to be the business. That's what we do around here.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I'm loving everything that Henry's doing, and he's even sometimes embracing the fact that at times he can come across as a little bit cringeworthy. He's doing this whole cringe judo thing. He's dancing with the belt, and I think that kind of makes him, fans care about him now, right? They either want to see him get his butt whooped or they want to see him win, but they're not indifferent. When Henry came into the UFC, if you look at his early interviews, he was just quiet, he was respectful, he was the Olympian, and now he's gotten a lot more comfortable. He has Captain Eric Albarracin by his side, who I do think deserves a lot of credit for this new Henry Cejudo that we're seeing. And I don't think it's a different Henry Cejudo. I just think he's allowing himself to be himself, to get out of his comfort zone, to talk a little trash. He is more confident now. He's able to make weight. He's not afraid about that. He's able to go and beat the bantamweight champion. He's not afraid of that challenge. He's able to call out Frankie Edgar and talk about maybe even fighting at 145 pounds. I love everything that he's doing, and I really do believe, look, at the end of the day, I don't feel like the flyweight division is going to be saved. I really do think that they are phasing it out and they are ready to get rid of it, but I really think that he is extending the expiration date of the flyweight division. Like, I feel like the UFC did not believe in Henry Cejudo. They didn't think he'd become this kind of personality, and now he's forcing them to say, like, gosh, I mean, even Dana talked about on Saturday night, he talked about having Formiga fight Joseph Benavidez. All of a sudden, we're talking about number 1 contender fights at 125. I thought we were getting rid of this weight class. So I feel like Cejudo doing his thing, Cejudo winning that fight in January in Brooklyn against TJ Dillashaw has forced the UFC to take a step back and say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't get rid of this division. Ultimately, I think they do, but I think for right now, one of his greatest accomplishments is that he actually made them rethink their plans.
I love that, and Ariel, I still think it is going to go away, though. And I see the signs that you're getting, I see the clues, but when you do talk about Henry specifically, it seems as though everybody he's going after, everybody that's got his vigor and attention right now, is all at 135 pounds. Look, I think he sees the writing on the wall, okay? He's playing chess a little bit. He's trying to get a good piece on the chessboard, which is, we now have a championship that's up for grabs. I've always wanted to be champ. I thought I was going to do it with TJ, but even if I have to do it absent of TJ, an opportunity has opened, and I want to go out there and take it. Point being, if he goes and does that and doesn't return to flyweight, that won't bode great for the flyweights. Would you agree?
Yes. I will also add, because we're talking about this fight between Cejudo and Marlon Moraes, the fight isn't 100% just yet. Moraes still has to get a new contract. He only has 1 fight left on his current deal, and as you know, the UFC is not going to put you in a title fight if you have 1 fight left, because they don't want you to win that fight and then walk away with the belt. A little Medusa moment where she threw the title in the garbage. You remember that, Jill? You remember that? That was a great moment.
Of course.
Anyway, so they have to get that done, and it looks like that's the fight that they want. They're trending in that direction, but still, there's business to be had. If they do get it done, Chael, I love that fight. I love everything about that fight. I love what Moraes has been saying. I love the heat between them. I love the matchup. I love the style matchup. Moraes looked great. I love that fight. I hope they get it done June 8th in Chicago. Round 4 here.
And what does poor Frankie Edgar do right here? He can't step in front of this thing. Moraes is his teammate, though. We could have some built-up drama coming. It's called foreshadowing.
Round 4.
Very important in the
Here
world
we
of
come.
TV. Go ahead.
Introducing the newest inductee into the UFC Hall of Fame.
Round 4. Michael Bisping is the latest inductee into the UFC Hall of Fame. That got us thinking. Chill, who else would you like to see get inducted this year?
I would like to see the king of the streets, Marco Ruas. And Ariel, I gotta tell you, because I have a little bit of a personal reason for this. Now, the king of the streets, Marco Ruas' physical attributes and his contributions certainly live up to it on its own, but this guy was my favorite fighter. Okay, he fought under a style called Vale Tudo. When I had my very first fight in the sport in 1998 and the promoter asked me what my style was, I wrote down Vale Tudo. I don't know what it means back then. I don't know what it translates now to. All I know is it's what Marco Ruas was doing, and so it's what I wanted to do. I went a step further, Ariel. This is before the internet was a real thing. This is before digital was even a term, so I had to go and buy VHS tapes. They came of Marco Ruas. It was a 5-set collection. I watched them all repeatedly. In many ways, this was the first guy that was coaching me, if you will. I bought in, he was in my living room. This guy was the real deal, and to remind you, he was said at that time to be the most complete fighter in the world because he was just as good standing up as he was on the ground. Whether factually that's accurate or not, that is what the record reflects. That is what my memory reflects. That is what my eyes told me when I had the pleasure of watching him on television. I can't believe he's not in already. Marco Ruas.
Oh, I love that picture, and I love that footage as well. Love the old school guys. I wish that they were celebrated more in this sport, so I love the fact that you picked a really old school guy, a pioneer, if you will, of this sport. And I'll stick with that theme, if I may. I would love to induct Jens Pulver. I feel like it's long overdue that Jens Pulver gets into the UFC Hall of Fame. Little Evil himself, the first ever UFC lightweight champion, a man who really helped put that weight class on the map, the 155-pound weight class. He had some great fights early on, and he really was one of the early stars of the UFC, and in particular in the early days of the Zuffa era. And you know what, Chael? You know why I really want Pulver to get in? It's because it would mean so much to Jens Pulver to get in. I don't know if you follow Jens on social media or his manager, Brian Butler. You're seeing them right there. They walk around with t-shirts that say hashtag induct Pulver. They have sat down with Dana White and have tried to negotiate their way into the Hall of Fame. It means that much to Jens and his manager, Brian. I give him a lot of credit for that because when you have that kind of passion, when it means that much to you, all it does is it validates and legitimizes the Hall of Fame. And so you need people like Jens Pulver in there. Could you imagine him on the stage getting emotional, talking about his career, the ups and the downs, why this means so much to him? This is what the UFC Hall of Fame needs. At times it has been viewed as somewhat of a sideshow, but if you have a guy like Jens who is actually out there campaigning to get in, who is saying that he really wants to be a part of this, who is wearing t-shirts with the hashtag induct Pulver, that means that this means a lot to him. And you need to reward those kind of people. The other people who are just like, yeah, I'm going to show up, I'm going to do a 5-minute speech, and I'm going to go on my merry way. Those people don't really build up the Hall of Fame. You need people like Jens in there. So if I had one pick right now, I would vote in Jens Pulver. I'd love to see it happen later on this summer.
And Ariel, I must tell you, I feel very confident in telling you, only time will get him there, but the time will certainly come. His accomplishments do speak for themselves. Let me throw one more at you that I would really like to see. Look, there's so many athletes that are celebrated, both with recognition, sometimes with a championship belt, spotlights on TV, all these wonderful things. But Ariel, there's so many more people that help to make that possible. I would like to see Dan Lambert, the head, the founder of the American Top Team, go and listen. He did so much, and a lot of this is financial. A lot of it was him parting with money. A lot of it was him investing in the sport, of which never brought him a return on investment, but it sure did change so many young athletes' lives. Look, some of it started with some friction with the late, great Glenn Robinson. A lot of it was a rivalry. That's true, but that's what makes the great sports. I've never felt that Dan Lambert was ever given the pat on the back that he deserves. I will offer you one other example. In the world of boxing, Sylvester Stallone has been put into boxing's Hall of Fame. He never got in there and put the gloves on, but he did so much for the sport, so much to bring notoriety to the sport. Of course, this series, the Rockies, is what I'm referring to. But when Sylvester got put in, everybody in boxing was like, yeah, welcome to the club. And by the way, what took the authorities so long? We owe so much to this man. I don't want the Dan Lambert story to go untold. He has changed people's lives, and he has contributed to the sport from the outside, and he never did it for a thank you or a check, and I think there's something very noble about that.
Dan Lambert, one of my all-time favorite characters in the sport. He has the greatest pro wrestling belt collection of all time. That has nothing to do with his accomplishments as to why he should get in the Hall of Fame, but I love that one. I'll offer two more because I know we're out of time. Along the same lines, Mark Ratner, he helped legalize the sport essentially all throughout North America. He deserves to be in there. And Rich Franklin. What about Rich Ace Franklin? It's time that he gets his due as well, right? It feels like he's been forgotten as well. So
no disagreement.
All those people. Let's get them all in. Sooner rather than later. Round 5, here we come.
Round 5 this Saturday, Justin Gaethje and Edson Barboza headline the UFC's trip to Philly. After his welterweight win last weekend, Anthony Pettis called for the winner of this fight. So Ariel, are Barboza and Gaethje fighting for the right to challenge Showtime?
It sort of feels that way, Chael, because as you know, a big part of matchmaking is having guys fight at around the same time, and thus you can have the winners of those fights move on and fight each other in 3-4 months. So here you have Anthony Pettis winning this past Saturday against Wonderboy Thompson. He says in his post-fight interview, and by the way, what a great performance, excuse me, what a great performance there from Anthony Pettis, as I get a little choked up about his amazing performance. I mean, he was the first guy to ever knock out Wonderboy Thompson. He moves up to 170. I did not believe that he had a chance in this fight. He was a pretty big underdog, and it feels to me like he is hotter than ever. It feels like we're back to the WEC Anthony Pettis, the guy who was, jumping off cages and kicking Benson Henderson down in the final WEC fight. And so now all of a sudden he's hot. All of a sudden he has options at 170 or 155. I love the fact that he called out the winner of this fight, because this fight doesn't have, some big storyline to it, Barboza Gaethje. There's no beef there, but it's just an amazing fight. And then when you consider the fact that the winner could be fighting Pettis, that is going to be an amazing fight in its own right as well. Pettis has options, like I said, because he's a 170-pounder and a 155er. I like these two options most, if I may. RDA at 170, because of course RDA beat Anthony Pettis back at UFC 185 and took the lightweight title from him. So I love the fresh coat of paint on the fight, and he's able to perhaps avenge that loss, or the winner of Barboza Gaethje. Either way, I would lean towards Barboza Gaethje because RDA is fighting in May. I know Pettis wants to return in the summer, so it would seem like the timeline would favor the winner of Barboza Gaethje.
And Ariel, what a tremendous clue that we were given by this call out from Showtime, right? So many people, myself included, were going, what's he going to do now? Does he stay at 170? He just finished the former two-time #1 contender. Maybe it's a fresh coat of paint. No, I think with this call out, regardless of who the next opponent will be, we at least know that Showtime is returning to the lightweight division. Now, I want to go back to Gaethje and Barboza. If you aren't a fan of this, it's a little bit of a hard story to tell, right? Why? Because there's no title on the line. There's no personal beef. There's no heat here. But if you follow the sport and you watch Barboza, you go watch his fights and you come away anything less than terrified by watching his kicks, how fast and powerful, whether it's to the leg, whether it's to the body, whether it's to the head. Okay, we're just not watching the same fight. If you go and watch Justin Gaethje and you come away anything less than full respect for the grit, the toughness, the heart, and the determination, we're just not watching the same fight. Look, I want to give you a quote by Justin Gaethje when he came to the UFC, before he ever stepped into the octagon, when he just came over and they were making the press release and the announcement when he got it from World Series of Fighting. He said, I want the scariest fight. Now that was very interesting, Ariel. Everybody else is calling for big fights, money fights, championship fights. He said, I want the scariest fight. And you want to know who I think that is? I think it's Edson Barboza. And you want to know why? Because I have literally had nightmares in my sleep at night thinking about him kicking me. So when I see that this fight is finally made, I can't help but get excited. Okay, I don't have a great storyline to tell you. I don't have a great way to promote it. But something special is going to happen when these two get in there.
And can we just talk about Pettis a little more here? I mean, did you think that he had a chance in that fight against Wonderboy? Because I thought that Wonderboy was bigger. I thought he was taller. I thought he was stronger. Of course, Wonderboy's style is to use, his distance, use his reach, use his length and not so much overpower you, but I just thought that he brought too many different tools. It was a 15-pound gap from his last fight. I couldn't believe that Anthony Pettis told me that he actually weighed less in the fight against Wonderboy Thompson. He told me this on Monday than he did in his fight against Tony Ferguson, and that was at 155. And so it leads me to believe, Chael, that this movement that we're having in this sport where guys are just cutting less and less weight is actually starting to open up some eyes, and people are starting to realize that extreme weight cutting isn't a good thing. I mean, just look at the last year with the likes of Daniel Cormier moving up, the likes of Sage Northcutt moving up, the likes of Anthony Pettis now moving up, and the list goes on and on. We're about to see Kevin Lee move up to 155 pounds. I am hoping that this is a trend. And remember last week when we talked about Darren Till? I hope he's the next one to do this. Luke Rockhold is doing it as well. This is starting to become a great thing. Finally, people are starting to realize that you can be just as good, if not better, if you fight around your walking around weight. His walking around weight is like 182, 185. This is brilliant. So there's a part of me that doesn't want to see him go down to 155 because he looked so good at 170. But I also do love the winner of Barboza versus Gaethje fighting him next.
I like it too. And Ariel, don't be hard on yourself for getting your prediction of Pettis-Thompson wrong. Everything that you just said, you thought this was the way the fight was going to go. It largely did. Don't forget, Wonderboy was having some really great moments. Wonderboy had won the first round. He was on his way to winning the second round. But what a difference one punch from Showtime can make. I also would be remiss if I didn't tell you this. The same question has to be asked of George Masvidal. Were you going up just to have a good fight, or are you returning to 155 pounds? Because as you're playing musical chairs with matchmaker here, there's a level of sense that would be made to bring both the winners at welterweight back down to lightweight and match them up together.
Guess what? Chael, here's a great transition for you. The UFC is back in Philadelphia this weekend on ESPN and ESPN Plus. There you see the coverage right over there. Saturday, I'll be there. Pre-fight show. We've got a ton of things lined up for all of you. And of course, the main event is Barboza Gaethje. Also, Michelle Waterson versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz. There's a lot to like on this card. We'll see you Saturday. But wait, Chael, there's more. Favorite segment of the show is up next. You know what that is, right? There
This week in MMA history.
Oh, what a fight this was, Chael. March of 2011. The Korean Zombie. Remember this? Do you remember it, Chael? Leonard Garcia. The Twister.
Of course I do. Of course.
One of the greatest submissions in UFC history. Now, I have never been caught in a twister. Have you? And if so, could you tell us how it feels?
Yeah, so I've only in drilling and practice we've worked on this. Eddie Bravo, of course, made this famous. How proud were he and Joe Rogan when it actually got pulled off, if you remember that night. But you know what, Eric? It stretches you. More than anything else, it looks as though it's really kinking your neck. It actually is your back. Your legs are going one way, your neck's going one way. All the pressure comes right in the middle to your back. Very painful hold, but no, I have never actually been caught in it in competition. And by the way, I know I screwed up the last few seconds of that segment, but Eric, I've been waiting for you to ask me for a prediction for tomorrow night. I've been on quite a roll lately. I'd like to give one.
Okay, the floor is yours.
I think Barboza. You know what? I think Barboza, and if this fight was a year ago, I would tell you it's going to be Gaethje, but there is something about the way that Gaethje fights, and I could offer examples, whether it was Wanderlei Silva or Shogun, where that dirty, nasty, wonderful to watch, violent style, to use your word, but it's got a timeline. It makes everything a little bit shorter. I just think in a battle like this, it's not going to go the distance, and eventually Barboza's going to wear on him, which is not what I would have predicted 12 months ago.
Well, if his last fight was any indication, the win over Dan Hooker, perhaps that's a sign of things to come this Saturday in Philadelphia. Great card coming up in the city of brotherly love, the UFC's third trip to Philly. Edson Barboza, Justin Gaethje, David Branch, Jack Hermanson. There you see the lineup. By the way, I'm very excited about the Josh Emmett return against Michael Johnson. That's going to be great. We got the weigh-ins Friday morning right here on ESPN Plus. We've got early prelims at 3:30. We'll have a pre-fight show for you. We've got a lot coming up. But for now, we're out of time. For Chael P., our great crew in Bristol, Connecticut, I'm Ariel. Again, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the fights this weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
This weekend on ESPN, contenders battle in Philadelphia.
I can never ever let you stop me now. Gotta go all the way.
A city that knows a little bit about contending, Philly never shies away from being an underdog. Unbelievable! A city rich in tradition and determined on making their own path. Fueled by brotherly love.
It's good to feel wanted by the Phillies organization, by the city as well.
This new land was built on making history by those who refuse to give up. UFC, top-ranked boxing, Braves, Phillies, all on ESPN.